Securing the American dream for the next generation of STEM and workforce talent. This is the Tech Ed Podcast, the number one podcast in all of STEM and technical education. I am your host, Matt Kirchner, and I've been looking forward to this episode for some time. Our guest has joined us before the last time several years ago when he was then serving as the governor of the state of North Dakota. Today, he is the 55th Secretary of the Interior of the United States of America. It's a great pleasure to welcome my friend and the Secretary of the Interior, Mr. Secretary Doug Burgum. Great to see you, and thanks for being with us.
Matt, fantastic. Great to be with you. Congratulations on all the success you've had on the important work that you and your team have done since the last time that I was on the show, but certainly been tracking your progress, staying in touch, and I know you're impacting the lives of educators and students around the country. So thank you for that at this important time.
No question about that. And certainly we've been tracking your success and progress as well. Here we are. You're a member of the president's cabinet. You're the secretary of the Department of the Interior. Just incredible work that you're doing at an incredible time for our country, Mr. Secretary. And we're going to talk about that in detail today. We'll talk about energy. We'll talk about nuclear. We'll talk about the Bureau of Indian Education. We'll talk about the incredible amount of land here in the United States for which your department has responsibility. I want to start with this though, and you and I have known each other several years. You were born in Arthur, North Dakota, a small town in North Dakota. Here you are, Washington D.C., a member of the president's cabinet, working alongside some of the most influential people in the really on the entire planet. You have to pinch yourself sometime. I mean, what's it like to be in this part of history at this time as Secretary Doug Burgum?
Well, it is a historic time, Matt, and it is an honor to serve. It was an incredible honor to serve as governor of my home state for 8 years. That was a wonderful, wonderful honor. It was, these are jobs where you can wake up every day and make a difference in people's lives, and that's a special thing to do. But here at Interior, obviously, uh, this is a role that probably the most misunderstood department in all of government because of the name. People think of the Interior, what is it? I mean, is it, just the center? Is it just Nebraska or is it
Right.
interior design? I mean, what is it? But here we are in Interior. I mean, we're managing 500 million acres of public land. That's about 20% of the surface area of the entire country, 700 million acres of subsurface. And then we've got over 3 billion acres of undersea minerals and resources that we manage, and we also manage all the territories. We manage all the historic sites, all the national parks, all the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. We manage all offshore energy. We manage all permitting on federal land, and we manage and work with our territories. So from Guam and American Samoa to U.S. Virgin Islands, we have 14 time zones in this thing called the Interior. So and in some of the western states, Utah, Idaho, Alaska. I mean, we're in upwards in many cases, 50, 60% of the land in those states is managed in partnership with the federal government. So we've got a broad set of responsibilities that cuts across almost every industry that touches every American, whether it's oil and gas, timber, grazing, recreation. Recreation is now a $1.2 trillion industry with 3% of the employment in the country. And that recreation industry, whether it's hunters, anglers, campers, all the recreational equipment, that wouldn't exist without access to public lands. And so we really are central to both the economy of this country and the future of the country. And with the team that's here, what an honor to serve alongside of all of them.
An honor indeed. And you think about just this time in history, as we mentioned in the intro, and how much of that comes back to the work that you're doing at Interior. I mean, whether it is the data centers, it's the energy opportunities and challenges that face us, rare earth minerals. We're going to talk about that. You're really at the center of so many of these really, really important aspects of the American economy and the American way of life today, which is why I'm so excited to dig in a little bit deeper on a number of these topics. I've got a number of them because you touch so many different areas of our economy and of our life here in the US. Let's start with this. You and I had a meeting a few months ago. You were kind enough to welcome me to your office in Washington D.C. Spend some time together, and one of the things that we talked about was this different name that you have for data centers. We've got them going all up all over, I should say, in my home state of Wisconsin, and certainly all over the entire United States. You have another name for data centers. I want to give you an opportunity to share that name with our audience, and then talk a little bit about why you see that space a little differently.
Well, I think the different name you're probably referring to is is intelligence factories because
Exactly.
in the world of AI, if we're talking about building a facility that's specifically related to AI, it's the first time in human history we can take a kilowatt of electricity and instead of turning it into light or heat, we can turn it into intelligence. And that's just a complete game changer. It affects, every job, every company, every industry. It affects every role. And I know, with the AI, it is gonna be software in my lifetime where I spent most of my career in software was I viewed it as the greatest invention, uh, in all of the history of mankind because it was a great extension of human capability, humans' ability to process and think and solve problems. And now with AI, it just takes it, orders of magnitude beyond where traditional software did. And we're gonna see productivity gains and invention and things that were maybe just dreamed not even possible, already starting to happen right before our eyes right now. But it takes a lot of power. And when people talk about data centers, I mean, a traditional data center, if it was, if it was say it was processing healthcare claims, you had a healthcare provider, you had a patient, you probably had an insurance company in there, and it might have been one or two companies that were utilizing that data center to process a transaction. If it was online shopping, you had a buyer and a seller and maybe a third party vendor, but it was a closed loop for those people. But AI is a general purpose technology, the GPT, and it can be used to that data center that they're calling them, the AI, that could actually be a it could be used to cure cancer. It could be used to advance education. It could be used for defense. I mean, it can be used for everything that we need. So it very, very broad use.
Very broad use for sure. And you think about the time that we spend in education and this important time at this juncture in history to make sure that we're teaching AI at every single level. And it's not just the generative pre-trained transformers, things like ChatGPT or Perplexity or Claude, which is incredibly, incredibly important and in many ways transforming education. But also you think about applied artificial intelligence and the address that Jensen Huang, for example, just gave at CES, and how we have all of these different physical artificial intelligence tools. It's the data, it's where it marries with physical intelligence. It's such a great time. It's so exciting. And I know, given your background as a technology leader, a technology executive, you've been keen to this for a long time and followed it the whole way. It is incredible to see where AI is taking it and taking us, and whether it's healthcare or transportation or individuals that have an opportunity now to improve their quality of life in ways that we never would have imagined. It's a great time to be part of this era of history. Also, a great time to focus, as you suggest, on that tremendous amount of energy that is required in order to run these data centers. And I know you're the co-chair of the Energy Dominance Council. Really interestingly named effort that you are co-chairing at this point in time, Mr. Secretary. Tell us a little bit about the Energy Dominance Council. Why is it called Energy Dominance? And especially at this point in our lives, why is this so important?
Well, it's super important. And of course, this new Energy Dominance Council was created by President Trump. And think of it the way inside the White House, there is a National Economic Council, the NEC, and then there's a National Security Council, the NSC. But President Trump understands, and this administration understands, that you can't separate our economy from energy, and you can't separate national security from energy. And the choices that are made around energy and energy policy and energy production matter to both the economy and to national security. And that mattered before. But now, in the age of AI, they're even more inseparable because the productivity gains we're going to see in the economy are going to come from, do we have enough electricity to power AI? And of course, we think about global conflict that's occurring right now. This is not some theoretical, Arnold Schwarzenegger movie future. I mean, this last year in the Iran Israel conflict, I mean, there was a day when 500 projectiles were shot from Iran at Israel at the same time. You know, 400 of them were coming slow and low at the speed of a Cessna. Some were coming at faster speeds and were going to arrive in 2 hours. And then there was a few hypersonic missiles that went, out of the atmosphere, came back down. They're going to land in Israel in 12 minutes. You have 500 things coming. You don't shoot down 498 out of 500 things without AI. And so, and then in America, this day happened. It wasn't even a year ago. It happened, and then in America, we were like, "Oh, what was the score of the ball game?" I mean, it's like nobody even like hardly paid attention to it. It was like just another day, but right unfolding. The Russia-Ukraine conflict, has anybody seen a headline of, "Oh, Russian pilots shot down"? No, because there's
All
nobody
drones,
in there, everything's unmanned. It's all
right?
unmanned, and it's machine on machine warfare, and that requires, intelligence to be able to defend yourself against a swarm of drones. So it's evolved very quickly, into not a theoretical, but an actual thing. So the Golden Dome, which is talked about protecting the United States, I mean, these things require AI, and we're in an AI arms race with China, right now for global dominance around that. So the name dominance in energy dominance, with tongue in cheek a little bit, we already had it one NEC. We had the National Economic Council, so you couldn't have a second one in the White House with the same acronym. That would have been confusing to have two NECs. But the NEDC, think of like your favorite Australian aging rock band, with
AC/DC, right?
AC/DC,
Yeah, yeah.
AC/DC with a lightning bolt in between. So, NEDC, AC/DC, but we're about abundance. It's about having enough energy to sell to our friends and allies so they don't have to buy from our adversaries. That's guiding foreign policy. Think of it as energy diplomacy, but having enough energy, for example, having enough LNG from America to sell to Europe so Europe can stop buying gas from Russia. And Russia was using those sales to fund the war against Ukraine, to be able to have people stop buying from Iran because Iran was using that their oil sales to fund 24 terror groups. Can't literally separate uh, energy from the economy or from national security. And certainly right now, energy has been one of the things that's been funding the aggression against the United States and our allies. And we want to change that. And we can do that with energy abundance.
I want to dwell for a moment, Mr. Secretary, on something that you mentioned regarding the Golden Dome and certainly what happened between Iran and Israel, in fending off all of those missiles. We had former Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker on the podcast just a few short weeks ago, it feels like, to talk about the legacy of Ronald Reagan. Actually, did that episode live, or recorded it, I should say, from the very table that Ronald Reagan delivered his weekly radio address in and around Santa Barbara, California, when, of course, where he loved to spend time at the Reagan Ranch. And one of the things that the former governor and I talk about, and I think you and he overlapped a bit as your governorships. We talked about looking back to like Ronald Reagan's vision during SDI and how so many strategic defense initiative, how many so many people laughed at him and thought it's just impossible that you could ever fend off missiles using technology. Here we are, 40 some years later, doing exactly that, using artificial intelligence, and that's the energy side of that is important. The AI side of that is incredibly important, and as you mentioned, energy diplomacy. And I don't want that word or that set of words to be lost on our audience when we think about using energy as diplomacy. We think about what's going on in places like Venezuela, certainly Greenland now, as we're recording this, is a topic du jour. So talk about energy diplomacy. What do we really mean when we put those two words together?
Well, I think we're seeing it in action right here. And again, one of the existential threats facing the planet turns out not to be climate change. A degree of climate change in the year 2100 with AI innovation, new things we'll be able to solve. We'll solve all kinds of problems between now and 2100, including
Agree.
whatever issue may be there. But what was a real threat right now was Iran having a nuclear weapon, because then you're gonna have an extremist regime that would actually use it. I mean, other countries have it to come to the negotiating table. But the threat of anybody doing a preemptive attack with nuclear, I think everybody would say, hey, that's probably pretty low, whatever. But all of a sudden, you've got someone whose whole mission was destroy Israel, destroy America. I mean, meaning the Iranian regime that's there right now. So then, them having a weapon that could wipe out a country like Israel, one bomb. I mean, Israel is smaller than New Jersey. I mean, it's a real threat to the stabilization of the world. So then President Trump, able to deliver a precise mission to set back their production of nuclear weapons. If that option was on the table for a president 20 years ago, and you were, the end of the Bush era, the beginning of the Obama years, and you said, "Oh, what's going to happen to the price of oil? We got an election coming up." If you'd have taken that action, then we'd had a price over $100 a barrel instead of it barely moved. I mean, we took out Iranian's nuclear capability because the U.S. wasn't isn't getting any we're not buying oil from Iran. And their move would be like, "Hey, if you're gonna bomb us, we're gonna block the Strait of Hormuz. When we block the Strait of Hormuz, then the whole world's gonna realize that we're in charge because we're providing the oil." And of course, they didn't block the Strait of Hormuz because you know who buys most of Iranian oil? China. And China
Right.
called them up and said, "Don't you dare block that." So the U.S. energy diplomacy includes, if with energy dominance, when we're selling energy to our friends and allies versus being dependent on our adversaries, it gives us options to make the world a safer place. I mean, President Trump's been amazing, the peace president, solving 8 conflicts in the time he's been in office. Many of those would not have been possible for him to take the actions he did without us being in a position of being the provider to our, the security provider of being the energy supplier to our allies, and that's the position we want to be in. And with the action in Venezuela, I mean, now we have an opportunity to move the center of gravity of the geopolitics of oil from the Middle East to the Western Hemisphere, because between Canada, the US, and Venezuela, there's enough production and resources here to counter anything that's going on in the Middle East. And so it sort of changes a 70-year dynamic we've had, which is the conflicts in the Middle East affect the economy of the world, whether you're partnering with them or not. And now again, I mean that's just a peace and prosperity on the horizon when Western Hemisphere and the U.S. Is able to be in a position to have energy dominance.
Mr. Secretary, every single Monday morning in one of our businesses, we pull our leadership team together and we talk about a different leadership lesson. And this particular week, by coincidence, that leadership lesson, which is actually one that I learned initially from a mutual friend of yours and mine, is this whole idea of leverage, in this case in business, and in understanding where you have leverage, how to use it, how to create it. And I can't help but reflect on that conversation we had on Monday and how well it matches what you just talked about with regard to energy diplomacy, where it really is how do we use energy in so many ways to create leverage. Leverage in so many ways, as Ronald Reagan taught us, can lead to peace. And that is exactly, it sounds like, what you're doing using energy diplomacy today. You mentioned China, Mr. Secretary, in that last answer. I want to talk a little bit about that as it relates to energy. I read a book by a guy named Dan Wang earlier. I guess it was late in 2025. It's a book called Breakneck. Really good book. I think you and I may have talked about it a little bit. There's some conclusions in it that I don't agree with every one of them, but certainly laying down the baseline for this global competition that we're in. And he talks at length about nuclear power, nuclear energy. I've long been a believer that that is a big key to sustainable energy, a big key to the challenges that we see from an energy standpoint here in the United States. Let's talk about that. What he says in the book is that the only U.S. nuclear power plant built in this century took 15 years to build and cost $30 billion. In August of 2024, so about, I guess, 16, 17 months ago, China announced it was building 11 new nuclear reactors, expected to cost, all 11 of them together cost the same as that one that we built here in the United States. What is it going to take at this juncture in history for us to lead on nuclear energy and for us to move into the future with regard to nuclear?
Well, we've made great progress in the first year of the Trump administration on this front. President Trump issuing 4 executive orders, all of them aimed at maintaining the safety of a nuclear industry, but cutting the stranglehold of red tape that was really it was regulation that drove the accurate stats that you described. I mean, to take $30 billion in 15 years, that was all regulation related that caused that. So since those executive orders went out last summer, there's been a surge of capital going back into the nuclear electricity production industry in the U.S. And there's a surge of innovation that's occurring. We count that there's over 10 different companies that are pursuing small modular nuclear reactor, both technology and designs. And part of the if you think of the world from the housing industry called stick built, which is you build one house at a time with carpenters out there cutting whatever, as opposed to sort of a manufactured approach. The same way we fell into this thing with nuclear, where we put guys on site and they'd build for a day and then we'd inspect for 3 and make them change something because it was 1/100th of a millimeter off. I mean, the what we want to move towards is designs that are approved and then manufacturing facilities that can meet that specification. I mean, this goes on in all manufacturing. A design gets approved for safety, whether it's use in a deep mine or whether it's a part on an airplane. We approve it, And then once you manufacture to that spec, you don't have to inspect and approve each part as it's being made, by craftsmen. You manufacture them in the same way we can start manufacturing nuclear plants that can come out in the small modular nuclear. Some of these aren't that small. I mean, the traditional nuclear plant we would build would be, just over a gigawatt or 1,100 megawatts. Some of the SMRs that are coming out from some of the leading companies are about 345 megawatts, but you can string. There's a deal that's I think, going to be announced in Virginia soon, where they're stringing three or four of these together. So you've got, you're using this manufacturer design for the smaller units. You put them together, you've got a power plant, and it could go very, very quickly. So lowering the cost, speeding up the production. You mentioned China on the nuclear front, but China is also still powering their economy and powering their AI with coal.
For
60% of
sure.
China's electricity is coming from coal, and they opened up last year 95 gigawatts of coal, and they had 86 gigawatts of coal this year. 1 gigawatt is the entire Denver metro area. 1 gigawatt is Utah. I mean, it is just crazy how they're building so much power in that country. And of course, they don't have the concern for the environment or the permitting regulations that we have. So we are handicapped. We can be ahead on the chips, we can be ahead on the software, we can be ahead on the training models, but they are beating us in the electric production side because of their ability to build things quickly with no regard for things. So we've got to find the right balance. And right now, under President Trump, under some emergency rules, we have permitted some things in in 14 days and 28 days that used to take 1 and 2 years without cutting any shortcuts, just using strike teams and applying, modern process technology to get stuff done quickly. So we can speed up things a lot, by not just, having, permits sitting in people's inboxes for 30 days at a time while it goes through the federal government whisper chain. We can actually get out there and serve these customers like they are. They're customers that are on the front line of America's future. That's how we're approaching it, and that's how we've been able to cut down permitting times in the last year.
So, a couple things, Mr. Secretary. First of all, I love the discussion about standardization on the SMR side of things. And we had a gentleman from Holtec International, big player in the nuclear space, on the podcast about a year ago, Patrick O'Brien. I'll link that episode up in the show notes for the audience. Great episode talking about the future of nuclear. I'm a manufacturing guy, as you know, spent 30 years running manufacturing companies, CEO of two of them, and a chief operating officer of a third one, and that was all about standardization, right? So the last company I ran, I had a plant in Iowa, I had a plant in Indiana, I had a plant in Wisconsin. I distinctly remember a conversation with one of those plant managers that said, "Well, up in Wisconsin, they do it the Wisconsin way. Here in Iowa, we do it the Iowa way." And I said, "You know what? We're going to figure out the best way, and we're all going to do it the best way." And when you have that idea of standardization, when you have that idea of aligning everybody's efforts, that I could take somebody from one plant and put them in another, and everything work the same way, that's when we could accelerate. That's when we can, when you talk about speed of innovation, that's when we could do things at scale, because we weren't sitting around trying to figure out how to solve the same problem that somebody else had solved before. So that aspect of what you're saying is music to my ears. As you know, and as you and I have discussed, I spent some time in China back in August. Fascinating trip. Seeing a lot of what you're touching on, the differences in the way that things get done, certainly the differences in regulation, and nobody would argue that we don't want to do things in a safe, sustainable fashion here in the United States. At the same time, we are in a global competition, and we do have to move at speed and at scale. And so what you're talking about here makes so much sense to me. You mentioned 60% of the power being derived from coal in China. I want to bring up another 60% number as we segue into our next question. And that is that I'm told that something like 60% of the rare earth minerals mining that happens globally happens in China. Also, that something like 90% of the refining is going on in China. You and I have talked about this. Let's start out with, and certainly the work you're doing at Interior has huge implications for rare earth minerals. Talk, what are, for our audience members that maybe aren't totally familiar, what are these minerals? Why are they so important? Let's start there, and then we'll go a little bit deeper.
Well, we think about the, rare earth or critical minerals as things that, uh, we don't spend a lot of time thinking about in America, but they're in virtually every product. You can't go through a day. I mean, if you're using a cell phone, your life is dependent in some way on these rare earth minerals. If you're driving a car, one of the things that's very specific is these high powered, lightweight magnets. There's over 20 applications in most cars, even if it's not an electric car. I mean, it could be the retractor for your seatbelt, could be a number of different things, but these are all things that are come from these minerals. And you're right, China has strategically, they are the most energy dependent country in the world. We talked about that, importing 11.5 million barrels of oil a day. They knew they didn't have that. So over 20 years ago, they said, wow, what's the thing that we could corner the market on, that we could control? And so whether they're mining in the, the, the DRC, the Congo in Africa, or whether they're tearing up Malaysia or Indonesia, then they're shipping those minerals back to China to do the processing. So they've got a stranglehold. They've got a global monopoly, because lots of countries, Europe and the U.S., said, "Oh, it's dirty. We don't want to do it. Mining is bad. Let's get out of the mining business." And China went headlong into it and has built capability. They take the periodic table. You take the top 20 most of these critical minerals, China, and just put them on the chart. We're doing that here as we're trying to build out the U.S. strategy. 85 to 100% of the processing on the top 20 done in China. So the whole world, it's not just the U.S., the whole world is dependent. And so under the Trump administration, we've been going at, I may steal the name of Wang's book, but the breakneck space. I mean, we're
Right.
going to catch up. We've just said, hey, we've got 12 or 24 months. We've got to catch up. We've got to get back. It's not just drill, baby, drill. It's mine, baby, mine. We've got to turn this country back into a mining country, and we can do it here better, safer, smarter, just like we do on energy. We can do it in a clean way in this country, and we can do it on federal land. We can do it in remote places where we're not impacting any of our national parks or any of our things. We've got so much space, and we have these materials here. They're not rare in the sense that you can't find them like it's a rare thing. They're rare. They call it rare because you might have to move 1 million tons of earth to get a ton of the rare earth mineral. If we can do the co-work, and particularly one of the places that you can do that work is with coal, because in coal, particularly in our western states with lignite coal, we've got huge quantities of gallium and germanium, that exists in coal in places like Montana, Wyoming, and North Dakota. It would not be economic to move 1 million tons of earth to get 10 tons of germanium or gallium. But if you're moving it to produce, either thermal coal for power or electricity, or if you're using it for metallurgical coal like we have on the East Coast to make coke, to make steel, to get us back in the steel industry, to get us back in the shipbuilding industry. So when we're doing other mining, mining for uranium, which we need because we're importing nuclear fuel from Russia right now. Can you believe that? I mean, we're dependent on our adversaries to keep our power plants going. We need to get back into these things. And another thing, when you talk about education, 36,000 lawyers graduated in the U.S. last year. We graduated about 300 people with mining or metallurgical degrees. So if you've got any students out there listening, man, if you want a career that's going to be job security, get yourself into the mining business and metallurgical business, because this is going to be a strategic commitment of the United States to never, ever again be dependent on an adversary for the things that we need for technology, for cell phones, for everyday life, for automotive, and certainly for defense tech. You can't do the defense tech that we're talking about without having that. So just like we've got a strategic petroleum reserve, this country needs to build out strategic stockpiles of each of these critical minerals to make sure that we don't get caught in the bind that we saw ourselves in just last May when China put on export controls and threatened to do that. We were 2 weeks away from virtually every car plant in the world shutting down because the wave that we've gone through, Matt, of just-in-time inventory and just-in-time manufacturing. There weren't even any of the private companies that had stockpiles, much less the government. So everybody was just getting their stuff just in time, from China to keep their manufacturing plants going. So this was a major shock to the system. Because of energy diplomacy, we were able to negotiate our way through it. China put a pause on export controls. They've fired the shot, and we need to respond now with all the things the whole of government and the whole of industry to make sure that ourselves and the Western world is not dependent on an adversary to keep our economy going.
And as you suggest, Mr. Secretary, we have all of these rare earth or critical minerals here. that we need. I always harken back to a conversation I had with a friend of mine, Tim Sullivan. Tim was the chairman and CEO of Bucyrus International, huge mining equipment company here in the United States. Actually sold that company to Caterpillar in 2011 for somewhere between 8.5 and $9 billion with a B in 2011 dollars. Really, really influential person in the world of mining. And I had asked Tim in a conversation, do we have these here? He said, we have all of them that we need. We have all the critical minerals that we could ever need here in the United States. We just have to be able to find ways to get access to them to make permitting and some of the environmental factors. Again, doing it sustainably, but taking all of that red tape and challenging bureaucracy out of the way. So we have all of them that we need here. Certainly refining capacity. If China has 90% of that capacity, there's much to be done there. And then to your point, making sure that we have the talent here in the United States that can lead on these types of projects. We had Jim Rankin at the time was the president of the South Dakota School of Mines on the podcast a couple of years ago. Talked about you think about some of these roles: mining engineers, metallurgical engineers, geologists, geography engineers. He said there's really only three institutions, I believe it was three or four. I think it was three that teach all of those disciplines here in the US. And so you and I had talked about this. In fact, I asked you a question. I said, how do we recruit and get young people excited about these kind of careers? And your answer was, can you make the periodic table of elements interesting? And I said, I thought that was a great answer. And I think that actually kind of speaks to how we need to go about doing this is to create exciting, interesting career pathways for students and help them understand these great opportunities they have. Any ideas that come to mind in terms of how we get students excited about the periodic table of elements, about how we build this next generation of mining and metallurgical engineers?
Well, one thing I was, excited to see, Catherine, former First Lady of North Dakota from Jamestown, North Dakota, was an ASU grad. She was honored, there at ASU during homecoming this fall with one of their big alumni awards for her work that she's done related to, addiction and recovery. I We were at the football game, so you've got, ASU playing a home game, stadium is filled, giant, big, huge screen billboard that's there, and while we were at the game, an advertisement came up related to careers in mining. I think it was Resolution Copper, which we need copper like crazy for to build out the AI factories, build cell phones, build all this other stuff. We had helped work on getting the permitting to get that mine going again in the U.S. We had some other mines that had been wallowing for 29 years, 29 years trying to get a permit from the federal government, and we got it done in 4 months. So, but I thought to myself, in my life, I've never seen a giant ad, at a university game saying, "Call us for careers," exciting careers in mining. So part of the way you get people excited is you get the industry thriving, get an industry growing, you get capital flowing back in, and guess what? I'm positive the starting pay for someone in those things, they're gonna be this is what computer science was 40 years ago. If you were the only
Absolutely.
one, you could name your ticket. I mean, someone's got a degree in this stuff, you're gonna have 10 job offers at whatever, and you name the price. So that's
No doubt.
one way to get people excited is get markets working again.
Yeah, think about graduating with a business degree and how many students you're competing with in a role like that, graduating with a degree in mining, and you've got 300 competitors for probably thousands of jobs. So that bodes really, really well, Mr. Secretary, for the future. I want to stay on this topic of education. A couple things. First of all, with regard to these rare earth minerals, we make a series of predictions every year on our predictions episode that launched a few short weeks ago. And one of our predictions was that you're going to see more focus in education on rare earth minerals. You challenged me to think about how we make the periodic table of elements interesting in the same way we're using our Discover AI platform and some of our companies to make AI interesting and exciting, especially physical AI. We're going to do something similar on the mining and minerals side. So you can keep your eyes wide open for that, and we'll take all the ideas that we can. Super exciting time in that space, super exciting time in the education space. I think a lot of folks don't recognize that the Bureau of Indian Affairs falls under your purview at Interior, and beyond that, the Bureau of Indian Education. Talk a little bit about BIE, and especially as it relates to some of those STEM and technology careers. What opportunities should we be providing for students that could benefit?
Well, there are huge opportunities and huge room for improvement. And one positive note, of course, the Bureau of Indian Education. I mean, we've got more students across the country involved in BIE funded or BIE led schools than I had when I was running and helping lead K-12 education across the state of North Dakota. So we're talking hundreds of locations and over 100,000 students that are involved in these schools. So there's a big opportunity just in traditional getting tech education back into those schools is key. Showing what the opportunities are for AI and AI and what AI can do to help Indian country. So those are things that we're all working on. And I'd say on a broader note, people may think, oh, well, isn't the federal government getting out of the education business? Well, the Department of Education is going through a process of trying to massively downsize and shift all of that back to the states because the states have, every state's got a Department of Public Instruction. Every state has got, there's just tremendous duplication between the feds and the states. And so, as a governor, I support the DOE, which is not a large agency in terms of people, but a large agency in terms of budgets. If those, there's only about 4,000, I think, team members at DOE. Interior's got 55,000, for example. I mean, so it's a different scale, but on the DOE can dramatically downsize Department of Education and move those grants, pass through grants out to the states. Some of the work that the Department of Education was doing was sending money to the Bureau of Indian Education. So we're just going to take over some of those projects. Some of that will come directly into Bureau of Indian Education, so we could have more resources to try to tackle these ideas. And we, again, love to be working with you and with others on exactly this problem: is how do we get education to be more hands-on, real world. And again, I mean, I think your educators know if they're the onslaught of AI and physical AI that's coming into these STEM jobs, it's not about being able to regurgitate information for a test. It's who knows how to write the best query, who's got the most curiosity, who can figure out, how to use these tools. And anybody that tells me they're worried about their job being, replaced by AI, I go, no, AI is not going to take your job, but someone who knows how to use AI may take your job.
100%.
Because everybody is going to be a better team member and be able to contribute more and do less of the drudgery and more of the purposeful, actual innovative work if they know how to harness AI in every job. I mean, it's like we're trying to make sure that everybody at the Department of Interior is using it every day as their coworker, because there's so much power and capability to remove the drudgery of a lot of the work that humans are asked to do, and allow humans to operate at a higher level.
I read an article in the Wall Street Journal over the weekend, Mr. Secretary, and I'll get the headline close, and we'll link it up in the show notes as well. And it was essentially that people working in tech are starting to believe that the American dream is dying as they see AI in some cases doing some of the coding work and so on that they were able to get paid significant amount of money for in the past. And in my answer to that, I even posted it on LinkedIn, is that the American dream isn't dying. You just need to know where to look to see that it's alive. And I think you point to a number of the areas where we've just got tremendous opportunity. Physical AI, what I call the edge to cloud continuum. How do we understand sensors and devices at the edge level and all the way up to the cloud computing level, and some of these incredible algorithms and AI and machine learning platforms that are processing information and giving us all kinds of insights. It to me, it's the most exciting time in the history of the planet to be a human being. It's certainly, I think, the most exciting time in the history of the United States of America to be an American, celebrating here 250 years as a country. And I want to give you an opportunity to highlight your Patriot program, investing $250 million in infrastructure and preservation in international lands that you talked about a little bit earlier. These are including things like masonry repairs, preservation, woodland fuel reduction, trail maintenance. I mean, super, super exciting time when I think sometimes you maybe get a little bit of bad press about what's going on in the national parks, or maybe what was a year ago. The truth of the matter is you're making some pretty tremendous investments in the future of these lands that so many of us hold sacred. So take some credit for that.
Well, thank you, and, yes, we are, and as whether the Patriot program, tackling some of these, I call it the low-hanging fruit of, getting our parks, our recreation areas that we run, through the Bureau of Reclamation, through the historic sites that people will be visiting in droves this year, because if it's a Revolutionary War or Civil War battlefield, it's probably a national park property. All of these locations, whether it's a wildlife refuge, national park, or historic site. I mean, from Lexington, Concord, Independence Hall, Statue of Liberty, National Mall, and then all the way across the country, from the Everglades to Alaska, and all of our. I mean, we've got national parks in American Samoa and in the Usain Virgin Islands. If you're going to visit every national park, you're going to need to get out and be flying around the world too, because of our where we've got national parks in our territories. Across all of this, as we get ready to celebrate this amazing country and our amazing 250 years that we've had, we need for educators should think about each of these locations as a campus. I mean, we're trying to get our team to think about every one of these, a battlefield or a national park. That's a platform for learning, and we can get people outdoors, get them engaged. Again, hands-on, real world. Don't read about the Revolutionary War. Go actually visit it, see this thing. If you don't, if you're going to be a wildlife biology, go to one of our refuges and explore. I mean, these are like career opportunities, exploration. So it's all about education, and we know we can bring that through all of this. And of course, we play a key role in Freedom 250, which is again a much larger celebration of all great things that we're going to be going on throughout this year, celebrating what is the country and the greatness of America. And America's not, we've had our challenges, we've made our mistakes, we've had all these things, but what makes us great isn't that we were perfect for 200 years. What makes us great is our aspirations have not changed. The aspirations about freedom and prosperity and about human flourishing. I mean, those are all at the core of what this country was founded on, and those aspirations remain high. They're embedded in the Declaration of Independence, and they're still alive today. The American dream is still here for people that want to go create it and make it.
I think you make a great point, and whether it's learning about the Declaration of Independence, whether it's learning about our freedoms, whether it's learning about some of these incredible battles that have made us who we are, and certainly the opportunity that the work you're doing at Interior provides for, what better version of hands-on learning than literally going to the sites where these things happen? So I think you make a really great point for our educators about having students get out into the world, have them go interact with some of these great historical spaces, learn about the history of this great country. Really, really important work that you're doing. Speaking of getting out and flying around and spending time in other places, you were gracious enough to extend an invitation to me to visit you in your home state of North Dakota this year as you celebrate the grand opening of the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library. And so, in as much as we're talking about all these great things and all these interesting things happening globally and certainly nationally, back in your home state, something really special happening this year as well. Talk about that.
Well, it is special, because Theodore Roosevelt was one of those, leaders that had such a big impact on the trajectory of our country in so many different ways, and interestingly, he was serving, at the 125th, celebration, so at that sort
Oh,
of the halfway mark of where we are
yeah.
now, and and when we think about, his role of, public lands and national parks, fish and wildlife, all of these things were things that either he founded or created or expanded dramatically during his time and really set up the conservation ethic. And people say, why North Dakota? I mean, this is just an incredible personal story for people that may feel like, hey, they've had tragedy in their lives. I mean, Theodore Roosevelt, grew up a sickly child in New York, young man, married. His wife dies days after their first child is born, and his mother dies on the same day in the same house. He loses his
Wow.
mother and his wife within
Terrible.
24 hours. He's completely distraught, as was the practice of the day. If you're a widowed young man and you've got a baby, find either your mother. Oh, my mother's also dead. Oh, how about my sister? He gives his daughter Alice to his sister and says, I'm heading west. I mean, he had a diary. He kept the diary every day. The diary of that day, February 14th, 1884, has just got a big X in it. And he wrote underneath that, the light in my life has gone out. And then
Hmm.
he stopped journaling. I mean, the guy was
Wow.
completely a wreck, as you might expect any people to go through that. He got on a train, he went west, and the train stopped and where the Little Missouri was crossing in the Badlands. And then there he spent a big chunk of the next 4 years as becoming a rancher, rough and tumble. I mean, building this ethic, understanding that the bison were disappearing. We've got to do some things about preservation of wildlife. The wild areas were disappearing, and so it's considered his Elkhorn Ranch. It's considered essentially the cradle of conservation. The place that is inside the national park, the Theodore Roosevelt National Park. Interestingly, we have 63 national parks, only one is named after a person, the Theodore Roosevelt National Park. Every other one is named after a place, and appropriately it is. And so this is the $450 million high-tech AI presidential library and museum for TR, which is really more of a, it's like I call it an outdoor nature experience as well. This thing is the largest project ever done at any one of our flagship national parks entrance communities by a private foundation. It's not a government project, private foundation is doing it. And Microsoft, key partner, $26 million investment. This is going to be the first AI. They have recorded uh, every speech that he gave, every letter. He wrote more letters than Jefferson and Washington did. Like 170,000 documents have been
Wow.
into this large language model. And so you always say, "Wow, wouldn't it be interesting to have dinner with a person in history?" You make it through the library, the multiple paths of leadership, citizenship, conservation. You get to the end, you're going to be in a room surrounded by the words of the In the Arena speech, challenging you as an American. What are you going to do to get in the arena? What are you going to do to make a difference for conservation? What are you going to do in terms of leadership? What are you going to do in terms of your citizenship to make this, to not just be a keyboard warrior, not just be a viewer? How can you be a participant in the great American experiment? But then if you have a question, you're going to be able to ask a hologram of TR and he'll give you an answer in his own
Awesome.
words. So that part's super exciting. Big plans for the grand opening. When this was conceived years and years ago, the idea was always to open by or on the celebration of the 250th anniversary. So the library opening is a celebration of the American West. It's a celebration of public lands. It's not going to be just confined to Western North Dakota. It's going to be literally across a lot of the national park and other Department of Interior um, equities that we have because he played such a big role. But that is an official USA 250 Freedom 250 event coming up. Very very exciting. I would say to people, don't miss it. And then the other thing we have for your other listeners here, there's a boardroom inside the library. There are over 500 conservation groups that in one way or another have their roots that go all the way back. It doesn't matter if you're Boone and Crockett Safari Club, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, Pheasants Forever, Ducks Unlimited. All of these folks look back into their lineage, and somewhere Theodore Roosevelt played a role as a hunter and an angler in helping create that whole ethic of where we've got sportsmen's becoming they're our biggest contributors to conservation project. And anyway, I would invite, if anybody's listening out there, book your annual board meeting now for your board because you're going to want to do your offsite board meeting, in a presidential library at the entrance to a national park, and get outdoors, experience why you joined that board, why you're doing that stuff. I mean, this is going to be a gift that keeps giving back. And then and the last thing I say, there will be some surprises in there. A lot of people don't know that in addition to everything else, Theodore Roosevelt saved the sport of football by creating the NCAA after there was many deaths of college kids playing with these little leather helmets. We think this is the time of year we're celebrating football in America. We wouldn't have had that sport today. It would have been gone. They were shutting it down at colleges because it was too dangerous. So one more thing you can learn about that people don't know about TR is how he saved football.
I'm here in the state of Wisconsin. There was 1 year, I was just reading about this, Mr. Secretary, 1 year in history, in the history of football, that there wasn't a annual game between the University of Wisconsin and the University of Minnesota, and it was that year, and it was for that reason. And credit to Theodore Roosevelt for having the wherewithal and the leadership and the vision to be able to save a great sport like football, whether it's at the collegiate level or otherwise. Almost out of time here with our conversation with Secretary Doug Burgum. I promised him we would limit ourselves to a certain period of time. I have probably another 15 questions, Mr. Secretary. Would love to have you back, but want to be respectful of your schedule. We're going to leave it there. And by the way, I mean, whether you're a teacher, whether you are a student, whether you're a corporate executive, I mean, such a great, and I mean this in the most glorious of ways, sales pitch for what you're doing in North Dakota with the Teddy Roosevelt National Library. I'm going to be a visitor for sure. I'm excited to see it. It sounds absolutely amazing, and an amazing time with you, Mr. Secretary, here on the Tech Ed podcast. Really, really grateful for all the time you were able to take with us, all the incredible work and all the incredible leadership at the national level. Looking forward to seeing what's going on in the future and to having you back because there's so many great things you're doing, so much to talk about. But for now, thanks for being with us on the Tech Ed podcast.
Well, Matt, thank you, and I want to thank you and your team and all of your devoted listeners because with this age of AI, this age of advanced manufacturing, this age where really anything is possible, the tech education has just got to keep playing a bigger and bigger role. We know that traditional, classroom regurgitating, answers that model is not just outdated. It isn't going to work. It's not going to work for national competitiveness. It's not going to work for people that want to chase the American dream. So the work that you're doing, I know, is not just changing curriculums and changing approaches. You're changing lives, and when you change lives, then you're changing the lives of their families, their kids for generations. I mean, the work that you're doing really, really matters. And to close with a Theodore Roosevelt quote for you and all the educators that are listening, I mean, TR once said, "The great prize in life is the opportunity to work hard at work worth doing." And I just want to say, I know that the work you've dedicated yourself to be doing, and all the people that are following you and listening to this podcast, they're doing work that's worth doing. They're making a difference in people's lives. So thank you to you, Matt. Thank you for your leadership. Thanks for everything you're doing to give back, and thanks to all your listeners that are making such a difference in our country. Appreciate it.
Well, you made my day, probably my whole year with that answer there, Mr. Secretary, and certainly securing the American dream for the next generation of STEM and workforce talent and generations to come thereafter. To your point, really important work. It's certainly not work that we're doing by ourselves, but with great partners like yourself and others. So thank you so much for the work you're doing. Thanks to our audience for being on this episode of the Tech Ed podcast. We've had so much fun with the Secretary of the U.S. Department of the Interior, the Honorable Doug Burgum. He's been a great guest. We are going to link up the show notes at techedpodcast.com. We'll put them at Burgum 2. That's Burgum and then the number 2, since it's the second time here on the Tech Ed podcast. Check out all those show notes when you're done there. Check us out on social media. You'll find us on LinkedIn. You'll find us on Facebook, Instagram. The YouTube channel has been absolutely on fire over the course of the last several months. You'll find us there as well. Wherever you go to consume your social, check out the Tech Ed podcast. My name is Matt Kirchner. I'm your host. Thanks for being with us.